Let's talk to the head of campaigns for the Freedom Association, Andrew Allison. Good evening, Andrew.
Good evening, Kevin. And of course, Matt Hancock should go. I mean, this was the guy who said you must stick to these rules. If you don't, you're breaking the law. And I make no apologies for saying that you'll be prosecuted. This was the guy who said to me, you cannot give your mum a kiss or a hug on her 80th birthday 2 months ago. So, of course, he should go. He's got no integrity, no honor, no decency about him.
Yeah, and I think also, this wasn't quite what we were going to discuss, but I'm always up for discussing this. Boris Johnson, if Matt Hancock hasn't got the integrity to see this is a resigning issue, then Boris must act. I don't even think the Prime Minister realises he's going to have to.
Well, he should realise it. It should be as obvious as the nose on his face that he's got to act and fire the man. I mean, why he can't see that is beyond me. I mean, Boris is trying to say that this matter is closed. Well, it's not closed until we, the people, say that it's closed. And it certainly isn't closed at the moment. I think that Matt Hancock will be gone by the end of the weekend.
Yeah, I've got to, I keep saying that I've had a text from Catherine in Cardiff, and she sent me this 7:30. He will be gone before you say goodnight to us, which will be 10 o'clock. I think that's optimistic, but I do agree with you. Boris Johnson is as dim as a Tok-H lamp on this. He does not see that he is going to have to act. Matt Hancock cannot survive this because the people will not put up with it. And Boris Johnson maybe at some point in his premiership will realise that what the people think actually does matter.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Let's move on to what I wanted to talk about, but I did enjoy that discussion, and we're on the same side on Boris and Matt. Woke Britain, this survey, 28 countries, it turns out that we are the least woke and the least PC country on the face of the earth. This is reflected in the feelings of the people of Britain, that we're not interested in wokery, we're not interested in political correctness. And so my question to you, Andrew, again, really, in terms of when will this government listen to the people? Why does this government and why do the authorities keep bowing and kowtowing to a tiny minority of extremely noisy woke warriors, pulling down statues, putting retain and explain signs by plaques, cancelling authors, cancelling artists? Why does the government allow this to happen when it isn't what the vast majority of people in this country want?
Well, for starters, this survey does not surprise me in the least. It's what I've been saying. It's what you've been saying on talkRADIO as well for a long time. You know, the British people are not like this. They don't like this wokery. They don't like this political correctness, whatever you want to call it. You know, to answer the question, why does the government put up with this? So I think they're scared, or they seem to think that Twitter is a great barometer of the views of the British people. Well, it's not. It doesn't. The majority of British people are not on Twitter. They don't go on social media all the time. They're not interested in any of this political correctness and wokery. So it's about time that the government realise that. I mean, Boris is the man who seems to love opinion polls, doesn't he? You know, whatever the opinion polls are telling him, he comes out in favour of that. Well, look at this opinion poll, Boris. And this opinion poll quite straightforwardly says that the British people are not in favour of any of this.
Yeah, and he gets frightened by polls that talk about, oh, you know, do you approve of slavery, and therefore do you approve of, historical figures who had associations with slavery? Of course, people are going to go, no, I don't. That's not the same as saying, I'd like you to cancel these people. I'd like you to cancel our history, to censor our history. We did an item last night. The thing that I hate, I don't know what you think, Andrew, but this idea that the compromise we can make to these woke warriors, instead of pulling down statues and yanking down works of art, cancelling authors, that we do this retain and explain policy, that we put these notes next to the works of art or the statues saying, although at first sight you might think this character is impressive, he made 7 quid out of the slave trade in 1523, therefore he should be cancelled. I mean, do you know what I mean? I think retain, don't explain, and tell the woke warriors to do one.
You cannot judge history or historical figures by the standards that you have today. When I put something on Twitter a couple of days ago that said, by today's standards, So Winston Churchill probably was a racist, but 99% of the population were racist as well, because they were the opinions that the vast majority of people held all those years ago. So you can't judge historical figures by the standards of today. And of course, we shouldn't apologize for any of this. But I mean, some of these people seem to want to cancel someone from history, because their second cousin was somehow involved in the slave trade. It doesn't have to be them personally. It just has to be some sort of family member. I mean, one of the greatest prime ministers we've ever had is William Gladstone. And yes, Gladstone, in his early parliamentary career through family connections, was against the slave trade being abolished, but he changed his mind. He moved with the times. Yeah. And when the facts changed, he changed his mind with it. So surely he should be recognized for doing that. But for these people who want him cancelled, it's irrelevant. He once held those views, therefore he should be cancelled.
It's ridiculous. Jane Austen, there's a museum down in Hampshire in a cottage where she used to live with her father. Her father was a vicar, a reverend, and he was also the vicar or the reverend of some plantation in the Caribbean, so had this loose connection with slavery. And now the museum, to pay tribute to Jane Austen's life, is full of these retain and explain signs, and not only pointing out that Jane was related to this man who had a loose connection to the slave trade, but also saying that she should be in the dock as well, because she drank a lot of tea. And tea came from dubious slave trading plantations. And also she wore cotton dresses. And we know where cotton comes from, don't we? Slave trade, cotton plantations. I mean, this is what annoys me about wokery. It is so asinine. It is so moronic.
And it's also not about where we are today. So many people like to think that Britain and the United States are the same. We had this with the Black Lives Matter protests. British police are not like American police. Lest we forget, it was only in the 1950s into the 1960s when we got the civil rights movement that the blacks and whites were treated equally under the law. Britain has never been like that. We've been a far more welcoming, far more tolerant nation. So that is another important thing to remember in this whole debate. So much of this has come across from the United States of America, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the conflation of the racism problem in America and the alleged racism problem here is ridiculous. I used to live in America. They have a massive problem over there. Every country has an element of racism. We do here. But do we have a massive racism problem as is being depicted by these woke warriors? No, we absolutely do not. This is one of the most tolerant countries on the face of the earth. And I hope, Andrew, that the Prime Minister, and I hope against hope, of course, takes note of this survey. We don't want any more of this wokery. It's nonsensical. We don't want any more PC nonsense. We want to get back to the common sense Britain that we used to know. Andrew, always a pleasure to talk. Thank you so much for your time. Andrew Allison, the Head of Campaigns for the Freedom Association. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan. I'm taking your calls in just a little while. They're really banking up here. So lots to talk about. Keep ringing in.